The Boker Tov, today's daf is Daf Chof in Nidrim. We learned for 4 Shlema, 4 Chayar, Achal, Pas, Peril, and Yom Tov Lippen Ben Vorfei Gechaya. Says the Mishnah. This really Mishnah is a continuation of the Mishnah in Yud Ches Mid Beis, the Mishnah of Stam Cherem Bit Lahachmer. Again, if a person says Stam Nidrim Lahachmer, person makes an error, it's not clear what he meant, and he doesn't know, and he asks me, let the rabbis determine it. Then we go l'chumra. We're more stringent, and that's how the Ran paskind also. Stam Nidrim Lahachmer. Even though we said that the suffix Naziris is lahakol, that's because we said yesterday that sometimes a suffix Naziris is worse than a Vadei Naziris because you can't bring karbonos because it's a suffix of Chul Nazara, so you're stuck. And also because Naziris, you have to be very clear about it. That's the word lahafli, you have to be very clear. So even though Stam Nidrim Lahachmer, the Ram still passes that Stam Naziris or suffix Naziris is lakula. But the Mishnah said that Stam on Yud Ches Mid Beis Stam Nidrim Lahachmer upirushim lahekel. If a person says a Stam Neder, we're not sure what he means, we go l'chumra. Okay, we say we take the more stringent interpretation. But if he explains it, a pirushim, if he says no, this is what I meant, then we go l'kula because he said that's what I meant. And here's the examples of the pirushim lahekel. That's the Mishnah in Chaf Amaraf. In fact, the Ran had it all on Yud Ches Mid Beis. It was one long Ran there. Really, the Ran explaining the Mishnah here is really on Yud Ches Mid Beis. Anyway, the Mishnah says like this: Neder b'cherem. He made a neder and he said, "This is also to me like a cherem, which is like a donation to Bedek Abayis, it's like a carbon." No, there's another word. Cherem has another word, another interpretation. Cherem also is a word for the nets that the fishermen use out at sea. That's also called a cherem. So he said, no, I just meant by the fish nets. I didn't mean by a carbon. I didn't really mean to prohibit myself with something. It's not a binding vow. All I meant to say was like a joke. This is also to me like the fish nets. So what does he mean? So is that okay? He says, yeah. Or he says, I swore by a carbon. This is also like a carbon. I meant to mean the royal gifts, the taxes. I didn't mean to say a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash. I meant to say that the carbon that we give to the king, which of course is not holy. Arei atzmi carbon. I myself as a carbon. As a person says, you're having a discussion with somebody and they're angry at one another, and he says, you know what? I am like a carbon to you, meaning you would the stringent interpretation would be you can't have any enough from me. I'm also to you like a carbon. And then he says, no. I have a bone in my house. Etzem is also etzem. Etzem is a bone. I meant to say that I am like a bone to you, meaning nothing. It's almost there's no meaning. He said like a joke. I keep a bone there in my house, so if I get angry and I say my bones are usher to you, or I am usher to you like my bones are usher to you like a carbon, I meant to say that bone that I have in the house. I got a little dog bone over there. That's what I was referring to. In all these cases, the rule is that it's mutter. You don't even need a heter d'am. You didn't make an eder. Or he says this: "Konim ishti nenesli." Forbid my wife from having any hana from me. Right? Meaning, my body is to her like a carbon. I'm talking about my first wife that I divorced. He wasn't talking to this wife. He just said, "Hey, you're getting his wife," and he says, "Oh no, I didn't even mean you. I meant the other wife that I divorced already." Of course, there's no problem there because she's not his wife. Or if it is, she's not there anymore. Al kulan ein nishon lahem. You don't even have to ask a shayla. You don't even have to go to Taras Nadarim. It's not a netter. That's the prat of pirushim lahekel, which means that anybody who says I didn't mean this, I meant that, okay, we go with that interpretation. The whole yesterday's daf was speaking about a case. Yesterday before was speaking about a case where he didn't know what the interpretation was. He says, "Oh, I just said those words. What do they mean? I don't know." So there we say we go l'chumra, but otherwise we go l'kul if he has an explanation for it. V'im nishalu, and the Mishnah goes on and says a strange thing. It says you don't even have to ask shel. You don't need a Taras Nadarim. V'im nishalu, and if you did, onshana, so we punish them. Umachmir naleim divrei Meir. We punish them and we're stringent with them. Two things. The Gemara is going to talk about what do we mean we punish them, what does it mean we're stringent with them. Right? You can find for them an opening, and we'll see this means to say that you could even just say, did they have charata, right? Did they have charata about what they did? We'll see the Ran over here is really on Yud Ches Mid Beis, Makamacher betarti pligi chada de'inon shin osam im avon adam ba'od shepasim becharata b'karle makamacher mishum delavi megufo sheneder apesach. In other words, he just says, sometimes when the rabbi finds a heter, he says, listen, had you known that when you made this neder, this was going to cause this and this and this problem, I didn't think of that. I didn't think that I was going to go starving, that I wouldn't know what okay, then we find you didn't really mean it. That's from the neder itself. As you find an opening in the neder, had you known that this neder was going to cause you this and this problem, prevent you from working, prevent you from eating, prevent you from whatever, I didn't realize that. That's one way to find a Pesach. A simple Pesach is, Makam has nothing to do with the neder, just simply, do you regret what you did? Yeah, I regret what I did. I regret it. Without not really looking at the neder itself, I regret what I did. The Chum say you could eat, that's good enough. Number one, you don't have to punish him, right? We'll see what that is, because the Tanakam Rav Meir says there's two things. You stringent with them, we'll see what that means, and you punish them. Okay, so we'll see what that means in the Gemara. It's two things. One is that you make them suffer, meaning as long as they violated the neder, let's say they made a neder and then they violated it for 7 days and then they come for a hetar sadarm, you make them keep the neder for 7 more days before you let them off the hook for your matar neder. And also, you only poseach, you only find a heter from the neder itself. Had you known this and this and this, would you have done it? Come say you don't even need that. You don't have to punish him. And but you just say, do they regret what they did? That's good enough. And we teach them, and we teach them, we educate them that they shouldn't make light of Nadarim, because Nadarim, make a neder, that's a very difficult thing. As we said, it might lead to Shavuos, and Shavuos, as Le'yanak Hashem doesn't find you innocent. These are difficult things. A person should always, and that's why we have a custom to always say, Bli neder. I pledge $1,000, Bli neder, right? Mm-hmm. Don't come for me for the money, don't.
You get yourself out of the neder so easily. What's the purpose of the poem?
Well, you can get out of it. You can get out of it, but the purpose is a person maybe wants to encourage himself to do something, or he's very angry, and maybe he won't find the rabbi to be matar neder. Maybe he says, no, I meant it. They won't be matar neder for him, so it has a purpose. It's not a good thing to do. Sometimes a person wants to encourage himself. We said that a person who says that, I swear that I want to put on tefillin every day. So it doesn't really have a meaning because he's already mitzvah ma'asina, but it does it. If he meant it l'shem shemayim, he did it. We had the case of the Nazir who came from the south, and he was afraid that his beauty would turn him away and turn him to sin. So he made a neder to become a Nazir. In a case like that, he did l'shem shemayim. There are cases where it's a good thing to do, but in general, we frown upon it. So the Gemara asks a kasha on the Mishnah. Hagufa kasha. And you say you don't even have to ask Qatar Sadarim. And then you say, if they do ask Sheila, if they come for Qatar Sadarim, you punish them, and restrain. So which one is it? These kinds of Madarim, when a person makes an answer, I didn't even mean that. I meant the fish, I meant the net, the fish net, I meant the my bones, I meant the royal gifts. I didn't mean a carbon at all. They don't really care. That's why Tamachachim knows what he's doing. Who doesn't understand anything about the Locha Shabali Shoel, he thinks he made a very neder. We punish him, and we punish him and we're stringent. So Bishlam Machmirim. I understand what stringent means. You don't let him just say, do you regret what you did? Of course you regret. Everybody regrets it. He's coming to that Toshanar, obviously he regrets it. That's not good enough. He's got to find a heter from the neder itself. Had you known that would have caused you such and such and such and such, had you known these would have been the hashlachot, the repercussions of what you did, would you have done it? You have to get a chareta like that. That's number one. That's the chumrah. What's the case of? Well, how do you punish him? We understand that you're machmer. You say you're matar neder unless you find the pesach from the neder itself, from the cause of, from the effects of the neder. But what is the punishment? A person made himself a Nazirite, and he violated it by, let's say, drinking wine or cutting his hair. We don't examine his case. We don't attend to him. In other words, he was in there. Let's say he became a Nazir for a month, and 7 days he violated. He couldn't hold himself back, and he drank wine every day. So we don't relieve him. We don't matar neder until he keeps another 7 days of the Nazirus intact. In other words, he keeps it halachically. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Yosef, but that's by a regular Nazirus, small Nazirus, meaning minimum 30 days. But let's say he made himself a Nazir for 100 days, right? And then he violated it for 50 days. If he kept 30 days, if he kept the Nazirus for 30 days, that's good enough of a punishment. So we say by Anam Aretz, who made a netter and comes to me, matter netter, a Tamachachim who knows that this isn't really a netter because he has an explanation for it. He meant his first wife, he meant this, he meant that, he meant the bone, he didn't really mean a netter. He doesn't even have to ask a shayla. But if an Amaretz who doesn't understand comes and asks a shayla, we're only posechlim from the netter itself, not just becharata, and we make him keep the Nazirus for the amount of time that he violated. Amar Yosef, since the rabbi said you don't attend to him, meaning he comes like this, and he owes us, you don't turn attention to him until he keeps the Nazirus intact, meaning if he says he's a Nazir, let's say for 30 days, and he violated for 7 days, you make him be a proper Nazir for 7 days. So since the rabbi said we don't examine his Einus Kakulo, that we don't, Beidina de Miskakula, Bezin doesn't listen to that. They listen, they come right away. They don't make him serve the Nazirus for the time that he violated. Lo Ovid Shapir, it hasn't done well. Rav Achabar Yaakov Amar, Mashamtinale, we even put the Bezin Cherem. Some say the Mashamtinale is going on the guy himself. We put the guy in Cherem. Others say the Pashim Pshat is that we put the Bezin in Cherem if they've done that. Achama Pasno Pesach Tana. We learn like this. La'olam alti ragel b'nadarim. You shouldn't be accustomed to make nadarim. Nadarim is a difficult thing, right? Nadarim is a tough thing, and you shouldn't be accustomed to do that. It leads to bad things. Why? Because if you do nadarim, if you make vows all the time, if you make nadarim, oaths which aren't as stringent as we said as shvuas. Why? Because shvuas it says lo yinake. That Hashem will not find that innocent. They're more difficult shvuas, and shvuas is chal, like even on sleep and even on things which are not substantive. They don't have any substance to them. There's no physical thing there. It's not like an item. There's no object. If you make nadarim, you will come to violate shvuas also. Balti regulates lamaretz. Another thing that he said. Now the first thing was about nadarim. That's why it relates to us. The other things he says you shouldn't be friendly with an amaretz. Because if you're friendly with an Amaretz doesn't know how to keep Tumas Amaisus properly, he might give you Tevel feed, which is a Chayim Misbeh if you eat that. Alti Ragalates El Kohen Amaretz. You should not stay with you shouldn't be friendly with a Kohen as Amaretz. Shesofach Lachilcha Truma, and the gear says Truma Tameya. Some of you go to Truma Tameya, meaning even if he's a Kohen Amaretz, he doesn't understand maybe that Yisrael is not allowed to eat it, and by mistake he's not going to be so careful. He might give you Truma tea, which is also a bad sin, and certainly if it's truma tamei, it's even a bigger sin. Don't talk too much to a woman; will lead to adultery. Right? And what is the Mishnah says? Shouldn't even talk too much to your own wife. Certainly other wives. Whoever looks at women's sofa, they will come to sin. Even if you look at her heel. You'll have children. When a person looks at a woman's heel, he will have children. Improper children will be the result. And Rabbi Yosef Ishto Nida, talking about his own wife, he shouldn't look at her when she's a Nida, and that will lead to bad children when eventually they have Bia. Amr of Shimon Lakish, Akeva the Ketani. This we say look at her heel. We're talking about looking at her private parts. That's opposite the. That's right above the heel, so you shouldn't look at a woman's behind. Tanya, the pasuk says like this. Pasuk at the end of Yisro says, "Vayomer Moshe Elam, Al tiro, don't fear not." After he gave him the Seres Dibros, Ki levavur nasus chilchem bo'od. God's coming to test you. Uva'avur tiyeh yiraso al panechem. God did this that His fear should be on your face, so bilti techato, you shouldn't sin. So this pasuk about vur tiyeh yirasal panechem zubusha. In other words, your fear is on your face. If you see fear of God on your face, how is that demonstrated by being embarrassed, by being ashamed? You can tell when a person's ashamed, he blushes or he's embarrassed, right? That's a sign of fear of God. You shouldn't sin. If you're a person who is shameful, meaning you're embarrassed by things, that shows what's inside your heart. That brings you to fear of sin. It's a good sign for a person, shehu baishan. Person who, that's one of the simanim of Jews, is that they're baishanim. They're embarrassed. They have shame. A person who has no shame has no limits and is not fearful of any sin. Person who is shamed easily, won't sin very easily because he's embarrassed. He doesn't want to sin. He's shamed by that. But a person who doesn't have any shame, he's not from the Jewish seed. He doesn't emanate from the Jewish people who stood at Har Sinai, because that's what it says. Hashem said, Moshe said this to Bnei Yisrael at Har Sinai. In other words, you people, now that you've got the Torah from Hashem, you will have busha. If a person has no busha, apparently he doesn't emanate from our seed. Amar Yochanan ben Dahavai. This is what Rabbi Yochanan ben Dahavai said. The heavenly angels, the ministering angels, told me four things. What people who were born lame, what do they come? Because their parents had bia not in the normal way. Rashi, the last Rashi on the page here says he lamala v'hu lamata. There's a previous Rashi says shehofchen. I'm not sure what that Rashi is going on, because he must have had another gear set. I don't see the word hofchen in the Gemara till now. Hofchen there means what he had bia shalokadarka, meaning that he was facing her back. Here it says he lamala v'hu lamata. She was above and he was below. And if you have bia that way, the children might wind up badly handicapped. We'll see. This isn't the only opinion. And what are people who are dumb? What do they come? They should because the husband kisses osamakum in that place. What are people who are born deaf? What do they come? They should because the parents talk about other matters while they're having bia. We'll see about that in a minute. Suman, what are people who are blind? What does that come from? They should because they look in that place. They look in that place that leads to blindness. V'raminu, is it really the case that you're not allowed to talk b'shas bia? Sholas imashalom. They asked imashalom, that was Rabbi Elazar ben Hyrcanus' wife. Neima v'nayach yafyafin b'yo. So why are your children so beautiful? Amar lehen eina masaprimili. He doesn't talk to me. Rashi and the Ram both say that means he doesn't have bia. When lo b'tchilas halayla, not at the beginning of the evening when people are walking in the streets and the man may see another woman and think about her, but lo b'sofa halayla, and not at the end of the night when it's already morning time and people are out early. There's a lot of people in the streets. Ela b'chatzos halayla. At midnight, that's when he has bia with me, when there's nobody in the street, so his mind does not wander about other people. He's not looking. He didn't just come in and see somebody else and then think about somebody else while he's having bia with his own wife. Ukshema saper. And when he has the bia, again, the saper meaning here that referring to the bia, megala tefach machas tefach. The rabbis tell us that when a woman goes to the bathroom, she should only reveal 2 tefachim of her garment. In other words, only pick up the garment by 2 tefachim to be more tznisik, to be private. And he does it even more. Misham says megala tefach. He only has 1 tefach machas tefach. He only has 1 tefach, one out of those 2. The domal of Kamisha Kavashade, and he's in such a rush, he doesn't want to leave her exposed. So it's as if a demon is pushing him and rushing him. And when he performs the act of bia, V'amartilo matam, why do you only do this at this hour? At midnight. Why did I bia then? V'amarli, he told me kedei shelo eten eseina bishacheres, so that I shouldn't look at somebody else. Because if a man thinks about some other woman while he's having bia with his wife, it's as if the children that come from that bia could be mamzeres, because he wasn't thinking about his wife. He didn't have the right intentions. But what do you see over here? That they were talking. That it says that, first of all, he says masaper. So masaper, Ron says ukshim masaper ukshim mashamash bitaso. From Rashi, it's masha and masaper mamash and mashamash. That masaper is just a nice lotion for bia. And from the Rani says ukshu mashamash bitasa ukshu could be when he's speaking while he's doing the bia, but the Pashup said it's the bia. But she asked him, why are we only doing it at this hour? They did talk there, so obviously they talk b'shas bia. This is a little kasha. They were discussing things relating to tashmish, like she said to him, why are we only having bia at this hour, not some other hour? So relating to the tashmish, she could talk, but they shouldn't be discussing the news or other issues at the time that they have bia. Their mind should be l'shem shemayim. That's what Yochanan ben Dahavai said, that the Malayach Shoris told me these four things. Chacham said, the law is not like that. As long as a person is not supposed to look bosa and he's not supposed to do improper things, but basically he could have bia however he wants with his wife. Marshal example is example that the meat came from the butcher. If you want to eat it with salt, ochlo. If you want to eat it roasted, ochlo. Mabush, if you want to eat it cooked, ochlo. Shol, if you want to eat it overcooked, ochlo. In other words, a man could do with his wife whatever they both agree to. V'chein dag habab. It's the same thing with fish. Fish comes from the fishery. The same thing that a person could have it take his wife however he wants to take her. Amar Meimar. Mamalach Hasharos. When he says when Yochel Medavai said, I heard these things from these four things from Malach Hashares. Who are the Malach Hashares? Rabbanan. We're not talking about really Malachim. We're not talking about angels. We're talking about Rabbanan. Ditema Malach Hashares. Mamash. We're talking literally ministering angels. How could Rabbi Yochanan say that the Lach is not like Yochanan ben Dahavai? They would know, ministering angels would know more about how a fetus is formed more than us. So why would you say that the Allah is not like Yochanan ben Dahavai if Yochanan heard it from angels? Why not? I might heard it from the Rabbanan. So why are the rabbis called Malach Hasharos? Why are they called ministering angels? The Mitzaynek Malach Hasharos, because they are distinguished like Malach Hasharos. They're distinguished. That people look at them and they set an example. The Ran says Shem Mitzayanim. They are separated. They are distinguished from other people. They stand alone. Malach Hasharos can mean Ba'agara Malamet Yisrael Mitzayanim Sham. He said that in the Agara of Pesach. They stood alone. They stood like Henam Levada Yishko. They stood alone. They didn't mix up with time. In other words, they were distinguished. They stood alone. It's the same way the rabbis are like Malach Hasharos in that sense. Hahi de Oslakami de Rebbe. A woman came before Rebbe and complained to him. Amrlo, Rebbe, arachti lo shulchan. I prepared the table, meaning I lay before my husband. It's a nice way of saying, it's all Lashon like nice way of speaking. I laid the table, but hopefully he turned it around, as if to say they had bia with him on the bottom and her on top. Amr law, BT, Torah, the Torah allowed him to take you. No, the Torah was matter you to be taken by him however he wants. What should I do for you? If that's how he wants to have bia, that's mutter. So you see again, this is, and Rebbe said this, so you see that what Yochanan ben Dahavai said is not necessarily the halacha, and Rabbi Yochanan said that that's not the halacha. He does a similar story. He does like the Rav. Not only before Rebbe, this was another woman came for Rav. Amar Rebbe, arachlo shulchan. I prepared the table, meaning I laid before him. Amar ma'ishnam in binsa. How is it different than fish? He could take you anyway he wants to eat the fish. Anyway he wants to take you. There's no problem with that. Pasuk says below, so still the rabbis discourage that kind of activity. Below sur achre levavchem, and you shouldn't turn away after your hearts. Nikanam Rebbe Shapiro says al yish the other because that person shouldn't drink from this cup. V'itenenayim because acher. He shouldn't think about. He shouldn't drink from this cup while he's looking at the other cup. Meaning he shouldn't have bia with one woman while he's having kavanas about another woman. Amravina. Even if a man has two wives, we're not talking about a woman that's an ish, adultery or something of that sort. Even if he has two wives, he shouldn't have bia with one while he's thinking about the other. The pasuk says in Yechezkel, I purged out from you all these rebels, the Haposhimi, and the ones who sin against me. Amrav Levi, what does that mean? What does it mean? A person that the pasuk says that Hashem purged away these rebels and people who sin. Amrav Levi, Elu b'nei Tishamidas. These are the people who have people of 9 various traits. In other words, these are all bad things. That a person has bia in one of these manners, this is a bad thing. What are they? So the abbreviation is b'nei asnas mashagach. Now there's no meaning to that. The meaning is we're going to explain what those things are in a minute. What are they? We're going to look at the abbreviations. B'nei ema. She does it out of fear, right? She's afraid of her husband. And then he has bia with her, or if she has been, he rapes her, right? So rape is rape. We know what rape is. Ema is fear, but of the 9 things we mentioned, and if you look at the abbreviation Asnas Mashiach, there's 9 letters there. But when he lists them out now, there's really 10 because Ema and Anusa are one and the same. She doesn't want to have beer with him, and out of fear, she has beer with him. If he should know that's the pasuk there. So the point is that here we're saying that whether she has beer with him out of fear, she's afraid of him. She doesn't want to have beer with him, but she does out of fear. That's the same as being raped. That's what he's saying, that whether it's fear or rape, that's one of the same. That's one of the 9, because that's like rape. Then the next was B'nai Snua. That's the Samach.
They're both olive.
They're both olive. Yeah, they're both olive, right? But if he counts 9, he says Elu B'nai Tisha Midos, and he says olive. And then Snua, obviously that's the Samach, because it's to make sure you sound it correctly. B'nai Snua. If, for example, he hates her, he shouldn't have beer with her. If he hates her, so divorce her. He's thinking about somebody else. If he hates his wife, so he has beer with her, and he's thinking about somebody else. These are all very evil traits. But if he's in Chayrim, he's in Chayrim, he's not supposed to have beer with her. So we had before that it's possible if he's in Chayrim, she's like in Chayrim too, Gufo. But anyway, it's improper. Shabolik Shumanuda, or maybe he's Menuda for Osadavar. He did something bad in that respect. B'nai Tamura, here also, Shabal al Achs Menashim, he has several wives, and he thought it was the other one. And he had Bia was thinking about the other one. While he was thinking about the other one, it turned out it was this one. He made a mistake. We'll see about that. Not exactly the same. We're going to talk about that in a second. B'nai Mariva, they're fighting. Shouldn't fight. If they make up, that's fine. But if B'nai Mariva not, he doesn't hate her, but there was a fight at that point. Shouldn't have Bia while they're fighting. They were drunk. They drunk also. He's not thinking about his wife. He's b'chal drunk. He's thinking about who knows whom. B'nai Grusha Saleh. He's intending on divorcing her. He decided to divorce her, but he figures, okay, meanwhile, she's still in the house. It's also, all these are improper. B'nai Arvuvia. Here also, Shabala Kama B'nai Aram. The Ran says that other people slept with her too. So what does it mean? She's a sota. So Rashi here says that there's several pshat. He's not even sure which one. Maybe he had several wives, or he doesn't even know which one he came on. He didn't know because there was dark at night. Whatever. That's what the Ran says. Many of people, many people live with her, and we don't even know whose son he is because they didn't have DNA testing, right? We don't have many people. He slept with her. Other people slept with her. Right? Let's assume that she's not even married, okay? But the same thing idea is that when it's you don't know who this is, that also leads to having defective children. But a chatsufa. Now, chatsufa is a woman who's like, she demands bia. Shemaiza Panel, Leo's Tavaspesh. She says, come on, she wanted to have bia with him. That's not proper to talk that way. And all these are improper. Says more, is that improper? You just mentioned Leah, right? So if a woman's asks her husband for bia, she'll have wonderful children. She'll have wonderful children. In other words, she wants to do l'shem shemaim. She'll have children that even Moshe's door they didn't have. Bring to me people who are wise and understanding. I took your heads of your tribes. Says the heads of your tribes I found. Maybe I found Chacham, but I didn't get people of understanding. That was in Moshe's time. But the Ksiv, it says Yisachar Chamor Gorim. Sachar is like a hard-boned donkey. What does that mean? But Yisachar Chamor Gorim, the medrash was that Leah had heard Yaakov's donkey outside braying, and she heard him, and she came outside and she says, come into my tent. So Yisachar, what caused him to be born, right? After Leah told him to come inside. When she came inside the tent, they had Bia eventually, and Yisachar was the result of that. So Yisachar was one, Yisachar, the children of Yisachar were more than Chachamim. Yodei Bina Li'itim. They knew, they had understanding, to do intercalations, etc. They were very bright. They were people of understanding. So you see that by her demanding the Bia, by her asking for Bia, she had wonderful, brilliant children. She didn't demand it openly. She spoke to him nicely. She pacified him. She had good children. In other words, the Ran says that too in the first of the wide lines. So she seduced them nicely. She spoke to him nicely. She passed on Kalei Shalom Yaakov. She didn't say, Yaakov, come in, Abia. Elazar says, come in, let me come inside for tea. She didn't ask for it openly. She said, come inside for tea, and then eventually things worked out. So that's the way to do it, but not to openly ask. If you openly ask, it's like all these other things which are improper ways to have bia, and that could lead to having defective children. Halach, Leilu Mutar, and Mitzvah tomorrow will start the new parrot. Have a good day, everybody.
Beautiful.